My name is Adeline and I am 29 years old. The night everything finally became clear began like a celebration. Polished and expensive, wrapped in soft lighting and quiet expectations, but underneath it all there was a tension I had learned to live with. We were seated at a high-rise restaurant, glass walls revealing a city that looked powerful from above, the kind of place where success is supposed to feel permanent. This was our engagement dinner, at least officially. His family sat close. His business partners nodded with practiced smiles, and my presence felt less like a partnership and more like a presentation. He stood up with his glass raised, confident, relaxed, enjoying the attention, and as he laughed, he said the words that split the room open. "If you mess up, I have a backup fiancé." The laughter that followed came quickly, automatic, trained, and I felt every second of it land on me. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. Months of quiet disrespect lined up behind. That sentence like witnesses finally called to speak. I really looked at him and calmly replied, "All right. Bring her on." The room hesitated, unsure whether I was joking or challenging him, but he laughed again, louder, pleased with himself, and snapped his fingers like this was all part of the plan. A woman stepped forward from near the bar, composed, beautiful, clearly prepared for this moment in ways I never had been told about. In that instant, something settled inside me. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked toward her without rushing, without anger, carrying the engagement ring that had once felt like a promise and now felt like a test. I placed it gently into her hand. As she tried to put it on, confused, uncertain, the noise vanished. Then I walked over to the backup, handed her the engagement ring, and as she tried to put it on, the room fell into a silence so thick you could hear a pin drop. That silence wasn't accidental, it was recognition. People were finally seeing what I had been living with. The casual cruelty disguised as humor. The way my value was always conditional. He tried to recover, to explain, to say it was a joke. But jokes don't humiliate the person you claim to love, unless humiliation is the point. I spoke quietly, but every word carried. I said I didn't believe in being anyone's option, backup, or contingency plan. I said respect doesn't laugh at commitment, and love doesn't keep replacements waiting in the wings. I thanked everyone for coming and told them the evening had revealed exactly what it needed to. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I simply stepped away from the table that had never truly made space for me. As I walked out, I felt eyes follow me, not with pity, but with understanding. Outside, the night air hit my skin like a reset, sharp and real. I stood there for a moment, listening to my own breathing, realizing how long I had been holding it in. This wasn't an impulsive stand. It was the result of countless moments when my achievements were minimized, my ambitions laughed at, my loyalty treated as a given instead of a gift. He liked control more than partnership, certainty more than commitment. That night he lost both. I went home alone, sat on the edge of my bed, and finally allowed myself to feel the weight of what I had done, not regret, but gravity. I knew there would be consequences, conversations, fallout, and stories told without my voice in them. But for the first time, the outcome felt honest. I had chosen myself in public calmly, without apology. That choice would echo far beyond that restaurant, beyond that ring. Beyond that man who thought laughter could cover a lack of respect. And as the city outside my window continued moving forward, I understood something I hadn't before. Silence can be power, dignity can be loud, and walking away can be the most decisive response of all. I woke up the next morning to a quiet that felt unfamiliar, not empty but settled, as if my mind had finally stopped arguing with itself. My phone was flooded with missed calls and messages, but I didn't rush to answer any of them. The image from the night before kept replaying in my head. He laughed and said, "If you mess up, I have a backup fiancé." I calmly replied, "All right, bring her on." Then I walked over to the backup, handed her the engagement ring, and as she tried to put it on, the room fell into a silence so thick you could hear a pin drop. That moment had already started living its own life, traveling through conversations, whispers, and retellings. What surprised me wasn't the shock of others, but how light I felt. For months, no, years, I had been shrinking. Parts of myself, to fit into a version of love that came with conditions. I had ignored the subtle warnings, the jokes about how easily I could be replaced, the way my opinions were treated as optional, the constant reminder that I was lucky to be chosen. That night stripped all the decorations away and showed the structure underneath. And once you see that, you can't pretend it's solid anymore. When I finally checked my messages, his were the longest. Apologies tangled with blame, explanations mixed with anger. He said I humiliated him, that I had turned a harmless joke into a spectacle. I realized then that we were speaking different languages. To him, respect was something owed to him automatically. To me, respect was something mutual, something protected. I didn't reply. Silence had done enough speaking already. Over the next few days, pieces of the story reached me from different angles. His parents were furious, not at me, but at the exposure. Business associates were suddenly distant, seeing a side of him they couldn't unsee. And the woman he called his backup sent me a message I didn't expect. She said she hadn't known the full truth, that she felt used as a prop in someone else's power game, and that she returned the ring. I respected her honesty. In another version of this story, we might have been set against each other. In reality, we were both stepping away from the same illusion. What he didn't know, and what made his confidence so fragile, was that while he joked about replacements, I had been quietly building a future that didn't depend on him. I had accepted a senior role in my firm weeks earlier, an international position he had dismissed as unrealistic and inconvenient. I hadn't told him because I wanted to see if he would ever ask, if he would ever see my growth as something to support rather than tolerate. He never did. Packing my apartment felt symbolic, each box a decision I no longer needed to explain. When I left the city, I didn't feel like I was running away. I felt like I was arriving late to my own life. The new job challenged me, sharpened me, reminded me of who I was before I learned to make myself smaller for comfort. My confidence returned, not loudly, not performatively, but steadily. Months later, fate placed us in the same room again at an industry event. He looked surprised, then unsettled, as if he expected me to still be carrying the aftermath while he stood untouched. We exchanged polite words. He tried to laugh, to soften the past, to say it had all been a misunderstanding. I listened, then told him calmly that moments reveal character, and his had revealed everything I needed to know. I wished him well and walked away, not out of anger but out of completion. The truth is, this wasn't a story about revenge. It was a story about clarity, about what happens when someone tries to reduce you to an option and you refuse the role. If you're listening to this and you've ever been made to feel replaceable, remember this. Anyone who keeps a backup doesn't understand commitment, and anyone who laughs at your worth has already disqualified themselves from your future. Choosing yourself doesn't always come with applause, but it always comes with peace. And if stories like this, stories of quiet strength, self-respect, and turning points, mean something to you, then subscribe to the channel, because the next story might be the reminder you didn't know you needed.